Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Cassandra Paz, and today I'll be discussing the role and empowerment of the Holy Spirit in early Pentecostal missions, focusing on the article, Whom Shall I Send and Who Will Go for Us, from the Encounter Journal for Pentecostal Ministry, published in 2012. And so this article highlights the empowering work of the Holy Spirit in the lives of early Pentecostal female missionaries, and there's one missionary in particular that I want to highlight through this presentation. But first, I'll start with historical context and challenges. Women in early Pentecostalism faced significant societal and religious challenges. At the time, women were often excluded from leadership roles in both the church and the broader society. Despite these limitations, many felt a strong spiritual call to missionary work. Their empowerment came through the work of the Holy Spirit, which overcomes traditional gender roles. In a time when women were largely restricted to domestic roles, their response to the Holy Spirit's call to global missions was revolutionary. For instance, Lillian Thrasher, often called the mother of modern missions in Egypt, founded an orphanage in the early 1900s. She had a heart for children and the needy, but her path was filled with challenges. Society at the time didn't envision women as global leaders, especially not in remote and culturally complex places like Egypt. Yet Thrasher's obedience to the Holy Spirit's call led her to transform the lives of hundreds of children. Her story is a living testimony to the historical challenges women overcome in their quest to follow God's calling. Acts 2:17 reminds us of God's promise to empower all believers, regardless of gender, for the work of his kingdom. Central to the early Pentecostal theology was the belief in the empowerment of the Holy Spirit. This empowerment isn't just for spiritual experiences. It was for service, for ministry, and for mission. Women who were called to be missionaries believed that they were divinely equipped by the Holy Spirit to overcome cultural and gender-related barriers. This empowerment allowed them to step forward into those roles that were traditionally reserved for men in many other Christian denominations. The Holy Spirit not only provided the strength in the face of opposition, but also affirmed their mission as an essential part of God's plan. The Assemblies of God, for example, has always emphasized the work of the Holy Spirit in its missionary efforts. This belief in empowerment aligns with the core value that women can be called and empowered for global mission work. And the legacy of this empowerment continues to shape ministries today, where women and men alike are encouraged to take up the mantle of missionary work regardless of gender. Acts 1:8 shows how the Holy Spirit empowers believers to carry out God's mission, no matter the challenges. In early Pentecostalism, there was a belief that the Holy Spirit actively moved in the lives of believers, urging them to take bold, often unprecedented steps in spreading the gospel. And this missionary zeal was particularly evident in women's involvement, where they were not merely supporters of the mission, but they were leaders in spreading Pentecostal theology. The empowerment of the Holy Spirit led these women to step into leadership roles that were unconventional at the time. For example, women like Thrasher didn't just travel to foreign lands. She built institutions, founded ministries, and laid the groundwork for future missionaries. She embodied Pentecostal theology that emphasized direct action, not just passive belief. Women in Pentecostalism, empowered by the Holy Spirit, were sent out as laborers into the harvest field, boldly proclaiming the gospel in places where the light of Christ had not yet been seen. And so, the article emphasizes the significant contributions that Pentecostal women made to global missions, especially in non-Western countries. Women like Thrasher not only spread the gospel, but also addressed critical social issues such as orphan care, education, and healthcare. The Pentecostal movement, particularly in the early years, was largely spread through the tireless efforts of these women, whose work was often both pioneering and practical. In the Assemblies of God tradition, this focus on social justice continues today. The Live Dead program, which focuses on sending missionaries to unreached people groups, reflects the same pioneering spirit that women like Thrasher embodied. The work of Live Dead is all about sacrificial service, and it encourages young leaders, both men and women, to step into difficult and dangerous places to bring the gospel to those who have never heard it. Romans 10:14 through 15 reminds us that of the idea to spread the gospel requires faithful workers to go to places where Christ is not yet known. And so, Pentecostal women empowered by the Spirit often took on these leadership roles in missionary work, church planting, and evangelism. And in the Assemblies of God, the legacy of these women live on through programs that encourage empowerment through the Holy Spirit, such as Live Dead. And so, in conclusion, missions remains central to the faith, calling us to engage with God's global purpose. Isaiah 6:8 captures the spirit of willingness. Here I am, send me. Whether through prayer, giving, or going, we are all called to play a role in the Great Commission. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you find your place in God's mission.